Hey everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. Today I'm coming at you with 3 more writing tips that no one ever talks about. We did a part 1 of this quite a few months ago, so if you want to check out 3 more fun writing tips that maybe you haven't heard before, I will leave a link to that in the cards. So the first one is something that I picked up from a professor, and it really just struck a chord with me, and I find it to be a really interesting and useful writing tip, and it's try to have both hope and despair in every single scene. This means that even in the most hopeful, happy moments of the story, there's still a little bit of sadness or despair or tension. What you're trying to do is make sure that there's always tension even in the most light, happy, kind of elevated moments of the story. Unfortunately, without a little bit of negative emotion for the character, a lot of the tension will probably start to dissipate. Similar to that, in the darkest moments of the story, the moments where your character is at their lowest, it truly is the darkest, saddest, most kind of just despair-filled moment of the story. You want to make sure that there's still at least a little bit of hope, because again, without that, there won't really be any reason for the character to try to fight, continue going, and in this case, it's actually the little bit of hope that maintains tension. So in every scene, try to make sure that you have kind of both positive and negative emotion for the character. You have both reason for the character to keep fighting, but you also have that negativity, that despair, just sad word, because both of those things are what can keep the character fighting and can maintain tension. Number 2 is to add one unexpected detail into your setting. Even if you're describing a setting pretty sparsely and it's not a super setting heavy scene, when in doubt, if you really want the setting to pop, just add one unexpected detail. One thing that you wouldn't expect to be in that place. If you're in a library, one object that you wouldn't expect to be in a library. If you're on a beach, one object that you wouldn't expect to find on a beach. You can even do this with color. If the entire scene is set in this rainstorm and it's super dark and gloomy, I don't know, you might have, say, a rubber duck that's really bright and yellow bobbing in the gutter or something like that. Adding that one little bit of kind of incongruous or unexpected detail can really brighten up a setting and make it feel very rich and original, even if it's a place that we have seen before. And finally, and this tip, I don't want to say that this is extremely unusual or that you've never heard this before, because you probably have heard this before, but I include it because it's one of my favorite writing tips, and it's one that I remember the first time I ever heard it, and it just really clicked with me, and I think it's a good general rule of thumb to follow, and it's if the reader can imagine a scene happening without you telling them that it happened, don't include the scene. We're often trying to figure out if we need the scene, if we need the paragraph, if we need this beat. We're told that everything should progress the character and progress the plot, but how do we know if something is progressing the plot? Well, when in doubt, if you ask yourself if the reader could envision this with relative accuracy, then you probably don't need it. It's a relatively simple rule of thumb, but ever since I've learned it, I've always come back to it as something to implement anytime I'm not sure if I should be including a scene or not. This general rule is a good way to explain why we often don't need things like, travel between point A and point B. The character's just sitting in a car. The reader can probably imagine that happening without us being told or shown that it happened, so we don't need to include it. So those are 3 writing tips that I don't think are talked about enough. Let me know what your favorite unusual writing tip is in the comments. What writing tip do you think is really great, but you just never hear people talk about? What writing tip deserves way more love than it gets? Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips coming at you every Tuesday and Friday. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.